can such evil exist in a family?
Death is not enough punishment for what you did, Vanessa. You are hereby sentenced to death by lethal injection. Michael, you are innocent.
Took you long enough!
Imagine sitting in a courtroom, hearing your own blood swear you would rot in hell. But what if it was all a lie? This family's secret just unraveled everything. Welcome back to Dark Echoes Crime. Please do well to subscribe to support me bringing more thought-provoking true crime like this to you daily. The Peterson family looked perfect from the outside. Their colonial home sat on 3 acres in Riverside, Connecticut. White picket fence. Rose garden. The kind of place where neighbors waved and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. Thomas Peterson was a cardiac surgeon at Yale New Haven Hospital. His wife, Catherine, volunteered at the local library and hosted book club meetings every Thursday evening. Their daughter, Vanessa, was 28, a corporate attorney in Manhattan. Their son, Michael, was 25, fresh out of business school and working for a hedge fund in Greenwich. Picture perfect. American dream personified. But on the morning of March 17th, that dream shattered into 1,000 pieces. Catherine Peterson was found dead in the master bedroom. Her body lay across the 4-poster bed she had shared with Thomas for 32 years. Blood soaked the Egyptian cotton sheets. The medical examiner would later count 43 stab wounds. Defensive wounds covered her hands and forearms. She had fought. But her attacker had been relentless. The murder weapon was a kitchen knife from the block downstairs. 8-inch blade. The kind of knife Catherine used to prep vegetables for the dinner parties she loved hosting. Now it lay on the bedroom floor, covered in her blood and fingerprints that did not belong to her. Thomas found her when he returned home from his morning shift at the hospital. He called 911 at 7:43 in the morning. His voice on the recording was frantic, broken, barely comprehensible. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes. But Catherine had been dead for hours. The blood was already dry in places. The room was cold. She was gone. The investigation began immediately. Riverside Police Department descended on the Peterson home. Crime scene techs photographed every angle. Detectives interviewed neighbors. Forensic teams collected evidence. And within 72 hours, they made an arrest that shocked the entire community. They arrested Michael Peterson, Catherine's own son. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Michael's fingerprints were on the murder weapon. His DNA was found under Catherine's fingernails. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed his car leaving the Peterson property at 2:17 in the morning, hours before Thomas returned home. And perhaps most damning, Michael had no alibi. He claimed he had been home alone that night, asleep in his childhood bedroom where he had been staying while apartment hunting in the city. But he could not explain the evidence. Could not explain why his mother's blood was on his clothes, found balled up in the washing machine. Could not explain why there were texts on his phone from Catherine, sent the night before her death, begging him to talk to her to stop shutting her out. The prosecution built their case methodically. They painted Michael as a spoiled rich kid who had always gotten everything he wanted until his mother finally said no. Financial records showed Catherine had recently refused to give Michael $200,000 to invest in a cryptocurrency venture. Friends testified that Michael and Catherine had argued frequently in the weeks before her death. A co-worker from the hedge fund said Michael had complained that his mother was controlling, that she held the family purse strings too tightly, that he wished she would just disappear. The defense tried to argue reasonable doubt. Michael's attorney, a seasoned criminal defender named Robert Ashford, suggested alternative theories. Perhaps an intruder had broken in. Perhaps Thomas himself had killed his wife and framed his son. Perhaps Vanessa had something to do with it. But the evidence kept pointing back to Michael. The trial began in October, 6 months after Catherine's murder. The courthouse in Stamford became a media circus. News vans lined the streets. Reporters camped out on the steps. Court TV broadcasted every moment. This case had everything the public loved. Wealth, family drama, matricide, and secrets that were about to explode. The prosecution's opening statement was delivered by Assistant District Attorney Margaret Holland. She was in her 50s, had prosecuted over 200 murder cases, and had a conviction rate that made defense attorneys nervous. She stood before the jury in a navy suit, her gray hair pulled back severely, her expression grim. She began by showing the jury photos of Catherine. Catherine smiling at her wedding. Catherine holding newborn Michael in the hospital. Catherine at Vanessa's law school graduation. Catherine volunteering at a soup kitchen. Catherine as a mother, a wife, a pillar of her community. Then she showed them the crime scene photos. The brutality, the violence, the rage that had been unleashed on this woman in her own bedroom. The courtroom went silent. Several jurors looked away. One woman in the gallery gasped audibly. Margaret let the images sink in. Then she turned to Michael, sitting at the defense table in a charcoal suit, his face carefully neutral. She told the jury about the financial motive, about the arguments, about the evidence that placed Michael at the scene, about the texts Catherine had sent, desperate to reach her son, unaware that she had less than 12 hours to live. She told them this was not a complicated case. This was a son who wanted money, a mother who said no, and a rage that exploded into murder. The defense countered with their own narrative. Robert Ashford was a master of reasonable doubt. He suggested the police had rushed to judgment, focused on Michael because he was convenient, because he lived in the house, because his fingerprints were everywhere in a home he had grown up in. But there were problems with the prosecution's theory. Why would Michael kill his mother so brutally if this was about money? Why would he do it in his father's house, where he would obviously be a suspect? Why would he leave so much evidence behind if he had planned this? Robert suggested this was a crime of passion, but not Michael's passion. Someone else had killed Catherine. Someone who had access to the house. Someone who knew where she slept. Someone with their own motive. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution called 47 witnesses. Medical examiners detailed Catherine's injuries. Forensic experts explained the blood spatter patterns. Digital forensic specialists walked through Michael's phone records and internet history. Financial analysts broke down the Peterson family finances. And then came the family testimony. The part that would turn this case into something darker than anyone anticipated. Thomas Peterson took the stand first. He looked like he had aged a decade in 6 months. Gray hair now white. Face gaunt. Eyes hollow. He wore a black suit that hung loose on his frame. When he was sworn in, his hand trembled. Margaret Holland approached him gently. Even prosecutors understand that some witnesses are victims too. She asked him to describe his marriage. Thomas spoke slowly as if each word cost him something. He said Catherine was the love of his life. His partner. His best friend. They had built everything together. 32 years of marriage. 2 beautiful children. A life he had thought would last forever. Margaret asked about Michael. About their relationship. Thomas hesitated. Then he said what no father wants to say in a courtroom. He said Michael had changed in recent years. Become distant. Angry. Entitled. Thomas admitted that he and Catherine had worried about their son. About his spending habits. His attitude. His sense that the world owed him something. He confirmed that Catherine had refused to give Michael the $200,000. Confirmed that they had argued about it. Confirmed that Catherine had been upset in the days before her death. Then Margaret asked the question everyone was waiting for. Do you believe your son killed your wife? The courtroom held its breath. Thomas looked at Michael for the first time since taking the stand. Father and son locked eyes. Something passed between them. Something the jury could not name but could feel. Thomas's voice broke. I do not want to believe it. But the evidence speaks for itself. Michael's face remained neutral, but his hands clenched beneath the table. Margaret had no further questions. Robert Ashford approached for cross-examination. He was gentle with Thomas. Asked about the family dynamics. About whether Thomas had any financial disputes with Catherine. About whether there were problems in the marriage. Thomas denied everything. Said their marriage was solid. Said he had no reason to harm Catherine. But Robert planted seeds. Asked if Thomas had a life insurance policy on Catherine. Thomas admitted he did. $2 million. Asked if Thomas had been having an affair. Thomas hesitated just a fraction too long before denying it. Robert let those moments hang in the air. Let the jury wonder. Then came Vanessa. Catherine's daughter. Michael's sister. The golden child who had done everything right while her brother struggled. Vanessa took the stand in a black dress, pearls at her throat, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like a younger version of Catherine. The resemblance was startling. Several people in the gallery whispered about it. She was sworn in. Sat down. Folded her hands in her lap with perfect composure. Margaret asked her about her relationship with her mother. Vanessa said they were close. Best friends. Spoke every day. Catherine was proud of her. Supported her career. Celebrated her successes. Then Margaret asked about Michael. About his relationship with their mother. Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. She said Michael had always been difficult. Jealous of her achievements. Resentful that things came easier to her. He blamed their mother for his problems instead of taking responsibility for his own choices. She confirmed the arguments about money. Said Michael had always been irresponsible with finances. Said Catherine had bailed him out repeatedly over the years. Paid off credit cards. Covered rent when he came up short. Given him chance after chance. Until she finally said enough. Margaret asked if Vanessa believed Michael capable of murder. Vanessa looked directly at her brother. Her eyes were cold. Filled with something that looked like hatred. She said yes. She said Michael had a temper. A violent streak he tried to hide. She said she had seen him break things when angry. Punch walls. Scream at their mother. She said the night before Catherine died, Michael had called her. He was drunk. Ranting about how unfair everything was. How Catherine loved Vanessa more. How he was tired of being the disappointment. Vanessa said Michael told her he wished their mother would die so he could get his inheritance and finally be free. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Michael's attorney jumped to his feet objecting. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. The sister saying the brother had wished their mother dead one day before she was murdered. When Robert Ashford cross-examined Vanessa, he went after her hard. Asked about her relationship with Michael. Whether they had always competed. Whether she had resented Michael for being their father's favorite. Vanessa denied it. Said she had tried to help Michael. Tried to be a good sister. But he pushed everyone away. Robert asked about the inheritance. About how much Vanessa stood to gain from Catherine's death. Vanessa admitted that Catherine's will left everything split between Thomas and the two children. Roughly $4 million divided 3 ways. Robert asked if Vanessa had anything to gain from Michael being convicted of murder. Under Connecticut law, convicted murderers cannot inherit from their victims. If Michael was found guilty, his share would go to Vanessa and Thomas. Vanessa's face flushed. She said she did not care about the money. She cared about justice for her mother. Robert let the implication hang. Let the jury wonder if Vanessa had her own motive to see Michael convicted. The prosecution rested after 3 weeks. The defense began presenting their case. They called character witnesses for Michael. Friends who said he loved his mother. Professors from business school who said he was ambitious but not violent. A therapist he had seen briefly who testified that Michael struggled with anxiety and depression but showed no signs of homicidal ideation. They called their own forensic experts who questioned the police investigation. Suggested the crime scene had been contaminated. Argued the timeline did not make sense. Raised doubts about the DNA evidence. But they could not overcome the weight of the prosecution's case. The fingerprints. The blood. The text. The motive. The opportunity. Then Robert Ashford made a decision that shocked everyone. He called Michael to testify in his own defense. This is always a gamble. Defendants who testify open themselves up to cross-examination. Prosecutors can dissect every word, every inconsistency, every moment of hesitation. But Robert believed the jury needed to hear from Michael directly. Needed to see him as a human being, not a monster. Michael took the stand on the afternoon of November 3rd. He wore a navy suit. White shirt. Conservative tie. His hands shook as he was sworn in. Robert walked him through his childhood. His relationship with his parents. His struggles in school. His feelings of inadequacy compared to his perfect sister. His battles with anxiety and depression that he hid from everyone. Michael spoke about loving his mother. About knowing he disappointed her. About wishing he could be the son she deserved. He admitted the arguments about money. Admitted he had problems managing finances. Admitted he had asked for help one too many times. But he swore he did not kill her. Said he would never hurt her. Said the evidence was wrong or planted or misinterpreted. Robert asked about the night of the murder. Michael said he had been home. In his bedroom. He had taken sleeping medication because his anxiety had been bad. He did not hear anything. Did not know anything was wrong until the police arrived the next morning. He could not explain his fingerprints on the knife. Said he must have used it earlier in the day for something innocent. Could not explain the blood on his clothes. Said maybe it got there when he touched his mother's body before the police arrived, though he did not remember doing that in his shock. He said he was being framed. That someone wanted him to take the fall. He did not know who or why. But he was innocent. It was not convincing. Even his own attorney looked troubled. Then came Margaret Holland's cross-examination. She was ruthless. Methodical. Relentless. She walked Michael through every inconsistency in his story. Every lie he had told police in the initial investigation. Every financial problem he had hidden from his parents. Every angry text he had sent his mother in the months before her death. She showed the jury texts where Michael called his mother controlling, manipulative, where he said he hated her, where he said things would be better if she was gone. Michael tried to explain them away, said he was venting, said he did not mean them, said everyone says things they regret when they are angry. Margaret asked if everyone murders their mother when angry. Michael said he did not murder anyone. She asked about the washing machine, about why his bloody clothes were being washed if he had not known his mother was dead. Michael had no answer. She asked about the security footage, about where he was going at 2 in the morning. Michael said he could not remember. Maybe he went for a drive. Maybe the timestamp was wrong. Margaret asked how it felt to stab his mother 43 times. Michael broke down, started crying, said he did not do it. She kept pushing, described each wound, each moment of Catherine's terror, each time the knife plunged into her body while she begged her son to stop. The judge had to call a recess. Michael was sobbing. The jury looked horrified. It was devastating testimony that sealed his fate. Closing arguments came the following week. Margaret Holland delivered a masterful prosecution summary. She walked the jury through every piece of evidence, showed them how it all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Michael Peterson murdered his mother for money, rage, freedom from her judgment. She showed Catherine's photos again, reminded them of the woman who had been stolen from her family, asked them to give her justice. Robert Ashford fought hard in his closing, pointed out holes in the investigation, raised questions about the other family members who also had means and motive, begged the jury to have reasonable doubt. But his heart was not in it. Everyone could tell. Even the defense knew they had lost. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. The clerk asked for the verdict. Guilty of murder in the first degree. Michael collapsed. His father sat motionless in the gallery. Vanessa showed no emotion. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Connecticut had recently reinstated the death penalty for the most heinous murders. The prosecution indicated they would seek it. The courtroom was packed again on sentencing day. Victim impact statements came first. Thomas spoke about losing his wife. His voice was dead, empty. He said he had lost everything. His wife, his son, his family, his life. Vanessa spoke about her mother, about the hole Catherine's death had left, about how justice required the ultimate penalty. She looked at Michael and said she hoped he would suffer the way their mother suffered. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Judge Richard Morrison had presided over the trial with firm control. He was 71 years old, had been on the bench for 34 years, had sentenced hundreds of criminals. But this case had clearly affected him. He asked if Michael had anything to say before sentence was pronounced. Michael stood. His attorney tried to pull him back down, but Michael shook him off. Michael looked at the judge, then at his father, then at his sister. His voice was quiet but clear. He said he was innocent. He said he did not kill his mother. He said he loved her more than anyone would ever know. He said the real killer was in this courtroom. He said the truth would come out someday. He said he forgave everyone who had lied about him. He said he was ready for whatever came next. Then he sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison looked at Michael for a long moment. Then he began speaking. He said this was one of the most tragic cases he had ever presided over. A family destroyed. A mother murdered in her own bed. A son convicted of the worst betrayal imaginable. He said the evidence was overwhelming. The jury had reached the only verdict the facts supported. He said the brutality of the crime demanded the harshest penalty. He said Michael Peterson was sentenced to death by lethal injection. The courtroom erupted. Michael showed no reaction, just sat there, staring forward. His father put his head in his hands. Vanessa remained stoic. Michael was led away. The judge left the bench. The family filed out. The reporters rushed to get quotes. The case was over. Except it was not over. Not really. Because 3 months later something happened that changed everything. Vanessa Peterson was arrested for embezzlement. Her law firm had discovered she had been stealing from client accounts for 2 years. Over $6 million. She had been using the money to cover gambling debts that had spiraled out of control. During the investigation into her finances, something else came to light. Security footage from a casino in Atlantic City. Footage from the night Catherine was murdered. Footage showing Vanessa at a poker table at 1:30 in the morning. She had told police she was home in Manhattan that night. Slick. Alone. But the footage proved otherwise. She had been in New Jersey. Less than 2 hours from the Peterson home in Connecticut. Investigators pulled toll records. Found Vanessa's car going through the Connecticut border toll at 1:53 in the morning, heading north, toward Riverside. They pulled her phone records. Found that she had turned off her phone from midnight to 4 in the morning. No pings. No data. Completely dark during the window when Catherine was murdered. They searched her apartment with a warrant. Found a burner phone hidden in her closet. Records showed that phone had been used to text Michael from a fake number the day before the murder. Text designed to look like Michael was planning something. Text that would create a digital trail suggesting premeditation. They found Catherine's jewelry in a safety deposit box Vanessa had rented under a fake name. Jewelry that had gone missing from the house the night of the murder. Jewelry the prosecution had argued Michael stole to sell for cash. And they found a journal. Vanessa's private thoughts. Entries about resenting her mother's perfection. About hating that Catherine had given Michael chance after chance when Vanessa had to earn every bit of approval. About Catherine discovering Vanessa's gambling problem. About Catherine threatening to tell Thomas. About Catherine saying she was going to cut Vanessa out of her will. The journal detailed a plan. Frame Michael. He was already struggling. Already fighting with Catherine. Already the obvious suspect. Plant evidence. Create a narrative. Let him take the fall. The entry from March 16th was chilling. Tomorrow night. Michael is taking sleeping pills. Father is working overnight. I have the knife. I know where mother keeps her emergency cash. I will make it quick. Then I will drive back to Atlantic City and establish my alibi. By morning, Michael will be the only suspect. By next week, I will be free. But it had not been quick. Something went wrong. Maybe Catherine woke up. Maybe she saw Vanessa and understood. Maybe she fought harder than Vanessa expected. The 43 stab wounds were not part of the plan. They were panic, rage, Vanessa losing control. When confronted with this evidence, Vanessa broke. Confessed everything. Said she never meant for it to be so violent. Said Catherine had woken up. Had tried to talk to her. Had offered to help her with the gambling debts. Had promised not to tell anyone. But Vanessa knew Catherine would never keep that promise. Would never forgive her. Would always look at her differently. So she had picked up the knife and attacked. She said framing Michael was easy. He was so drugged he never heard her enter his room. Never felt her press his fingers to the knife handle. Never noticed her taking his clothes and smearing them with Catherine's blood. Never realized she had destroyed his life to save her own. She said watching him get convicted was harder than she expected. Watching him sentenced to death almost broke her. But she could not confess. Could not face what she had done. So she stayed silent and let her brother die for her crime. Except he was not dead yet. Michael was on death row. His appeals were ongoing. And now there was proof of his innocence. The Connecticut Attorney General moved quickly. Michael's conviction was vacated. He was released from death row after 4 months of waiting to die for a crime he did not commit. Vanessa was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering, perjury. The prosecution sought the death penalty. Her trial lasted 2 weeks. She pleaded guilty to all charges. Said she deserved whatever punishment came. Said she had destroyed her family and could never make it right. Judge Morrison presided over her sentencing too. The symmetry was not lost on anyone. He said he had sent an innocent man to death row based on her lies. Said he would carry that guilt for the rest of his life. Said Vanessa represented the worst kind of evil because she had hidden behind a mask of perfection while destroying everyone around her. He sentenced her to death. Same as Michael. Except this time the defendant was actually guilty. Vanessa showed no emotion. Just nodded. Accepted it. She was led away to the same death row where her brother had waited to die. Michael was compensated by the state. $11 million for wrongful conviction. He gave most of it away. Started a foundation for the wrongfully convicted. Refused interviews. Disappeared from public life. Thomas never recovered. He retired from surgery. Sold the house. Moved to Arizona. Cut off all contact with both his children. His wife was dead. His daughter was a murderer. His son was a stranger. His family was gone. The case became infamous. A cautionary tale about rushing to judgment. About how the perfect child can be the dangerous one. About how families can hide darkness behind smiles and holiday cards and book club meetings. Michael Peterson lives quietly now in Vermont. Works at a nonprofit. Goes to therapy 3 times a week. Struggles with PTSD from death row. Wakes up in nightmares where he is being led to the execution chamber for a murder he did not commit. Vanessa Peterson is on death row at York Correctional Institution. Her execution date has not been set. Connecticut moves slowly with death penalty cases. She may wait years, decades, or she may die of old age before the state kills her. She has not spoken to her father since her conviction, has not tried to contact Michael, sits in her cell and thinks about the night she stabbed her mother 43 times, about the choice that destroyed everything, about how trying to escape her problems by framing her brother only led to a worse prison than any gambling debt could have created. The Peterson house was demolished 2 years ago. The new owners could not sell it. Too much history. Too much darkness soaked into those walls. They tore it down and built a park. Children play there now, unaware that they are running over ground where a family died. Not just Catherine, but all of them. Different kinds of death, but death nonetheless. This is the story of the Peterson family. The perfect facade that hid a daughter willing to murder her mother and frame her brother. The justice system that almost executed an innocent man. The father who lost everything. The son who survived death row but will never really be free. The judge's final words at Vanessa's sentencing echo still. He said Vanessa had not just killed her mother. She had killed her entire family. Destroyed every relationship, every bond, every possibility of redemption. He said she would have plenty of time on death row to think about that, to live with what she had done, to understand that some betrayals are so complete that death is not punishment enough. He said he hoped she suffered every day for the rest of her life, however long that might be. Then he banged his gavel. Court adjourned. Case closed. Except the echoes remain. In Michael's nightmares. In Thomas's empty house in Arizona. In the space where the Peterson home used to stand. In courtrooms where judges now think twice before believing family testimony. In jury rooms where people wonder if the obvious suspect is actually innocent. The truth came out eventually. But it came too late to save this family. Too late to give Catherine justice before her son was nearly executed for her daughter's crime. Too late to prevent the complete destruction of everyone involved. What would you have done if you were on that jury? Would you have convicted Michael based on the evidence? Or would you have had reasonable doubt? Would you have suspected the perfect daughter? Or would you have been fooled by her performance like everyone else? The scariest part of this case is how easily it could happen again. How a family member can manipulate evidence, plant fingerprints, create a narrative, frame someone they supposedly love. How the justice system can be weaponized by those who understand it. Vanessa was a lawyer. She knew exactly what evidence prosecutors would look for. She knew how to create a trail that led away from her and toward Michael. She knew how to perform grief in a courtroom. How to make a jury believe her. She almost got away with it. If not for her own greed, her own mistakes in covering up the embezzlement, Michael would be dead now. Executed for his sister's crime. And Vanessa would have inherited everything. That is the truly chilling part. She was willing to let her brother die. To watch him get strapped to a gurney. To receive a lethal injection. To be buried in a prison cemetery. All so she could avoid facing her gambling debts and her mother's disappointment. What kind of person does that? What kind of evil hides behind a law degree and perfect hair and family loyalty? The Peterson case reminds us that monsters do not always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the golden child. The successful daughter. The one who seemed to have everything together while her brother struggled. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone trusts. The one whose testimony is never questioned. The one who performs grief so perfectly that no one thinks to investigate her alibi. Michael Peterson knows this now. Knows that his own sister hated him enough to let him die. That is a knowledge that changes you. That makes trust impossible. That turns every relationship into a potential threat. He will never speak to Vanessa again. Never visit her on death row. Never forgive her. How could he? She stole years of his life. Put him through hell. Made him wait to die for something he did not do. And for what? Gambling debts? Fear of their mother's judgment? The inheritance that Vanessa could have earned legitimately if she had just been patient? There is no logic to it. No sense. Just a daughter who panicked and made a choice that destroyed 5 lives. Catherine, who died terrified and betrayed by her own child. Michael, who survived but will never be whole. Thomas, who lost his entire family. Vanessa herself, who traded a temporary problem for death row. And all the extended family and friends who watched this unfold. The Peterson case closed with Vanessa on death row and Michael trying to rebuild. But the questions remain. How do we spot the real danger? How do we protect the innocent from being framed? How do we ensure the justice system gets it right? There are no easy answers. Just the cold reality that sometimes families are more dangerous than strangers. Sometimes the person sleeping down the hall is plotting your destruction. Sometimes love is a lie and blood is not thicker than water. The judge sentenced Vanessa to death, but she was already dead inside. Had been since the moment she decided to kill her mother and frame her brother. That is the real death sentence. Living with what you have done. Knowing you destroyed everything for nothing. Vanessa Peterson sits in her cell tonight, thinking about her mother, her brother, the choices she made, the family she murdered in more ways than one. And somewhere in Vermont, Michael Peterson tries to sleep. Tries not to dream about death row. Tries to believe he is safe now. Tries to rebuild a life from the ashes of the one his sister burned down. The judge's final words were not about justice. They were about consequences. About how some actions cannot be undone. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. Some families cannot be saved. The Peterson family is gone. Not just Catherine. All of them. Scattered. Broken. Dead in different ways. That is the real legacy of what happened in that courtroom. Not the death sentence. Not the wrongful conviction. Not the dramatic reversal. But the complete destruction of a family that looked perfect from the outside but was rotting from within. What really happened in that courtroom nightmare? A daughter destroyed her family. A son nearly died for her crime. A father lost everything. A judge almost executed an innocent man. And the justice system revealed how fragile it really is when confronted with a determined liar. Drop your theory below. Could you have seen through Vanessa's lies? Would you have suspected her? Or would you have been convinced like the jury was? And subscribe. Because the next case is even darker. The next family has even more secrets. The next courtroom drama will make the Peterson case look tame. This is Dark Echoes Crime. Where guilt lives. Where families hide darkness. Where the truth always comes out. Eventually. Sometimes too late. But always. The echoes of the Peterson case will never fade. They will haunt courtrooms and jury rooms and families for generations. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you trust most. Comment your thoughts. Tell us what you think. Could you forgive Vanessa? Could you move on like Michael tried to? Would you want the death penalty or life in prison? The conversation continues. The questions remain. The darkness echoes. This is Dark Echoes Crime. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. And remember, the perfect family might be hiding the perfect crime.